Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the New Era Paranormal Podcast. I am JD Curry, and I will be joined by my co host Irene Achilleways. Our guest this week is Nash Hoover, the leader of the Chasing Legends team. From chasing legendary creatures to exploring the unknown, Nash and his team go beyond the ordinary to uncover the truth with cutting edge research and state of the art equipment. So, Nash, how did you become involved with cryptid research and the supernatural/paranormal field?
Well, it all started when I was pretty young. Um, Came across the book about Bigfoot in my elementary school library, and I just kind of snowballed from there.
So, you originally got interested in Bigfoot, and you're
Yeah,
from
that was
the
kind of
Midwest.
the first one that kind of piqued my interest. This was back in probably 02, 03. So, internet was, available, but wasn't as popular as it is now. So, books were still pretty king. And came across it, thought it was intriguing, and just kind of kept looking into the stuff from there. And then as kind of paranormal TV came into the fold, then that kind of opened up the floodgates for more.
Were there any teams or anything that you came across to help you decide on cryptids as opposed to the paranormal one?
No teams. I mean, like I said, this was back before paranormal investigating was cool, so there really weren't any teams. So yeah, it was just kind of I didn't even really know that looking for this stuff was really possible for the everyday person until much later.
And then where did the idea of chasing legends start?
So that started in 2013 is when the idea for the show came up, and it was kind of a combination of both my loves of filmmaking and cryptids, and kind of wanting to do kind of my own take on research and documenting kind of the whole process. And I felt that there was, what was out there in terms of cryptid TV wasn't real and could be done more authentically. So that's kind of where the idea and kind of inspiration of it came from. I can't hear you.
Was there a certain criteria to legends you decided to look into to film?
Can you repeat the question? I only got half of it.
Okay. As far as the legends that you did choose, was there criteria for which ones you pursued?
Early on, there wasn't. Now, for sure. But yeah, back when we kind of first started doing this, it was kind of, we'd kind of go after anything. And then once we kind of started to better hone our skills and production, we realized that we needed to kind of set rules for ourselves and what we go after, because we can't just, we have to build a production around this. So we couldn't just we had to have people to interview, and we had to have things to check out. We couldn't just to go out and look for something and document it and put it out there. It had to be there had to be enough there for us to build a story on. So yeah, nowadays we're a lot more picky.
And what is kind of the process when you do pursue a legendary creature?
Well, we start with basically looking at all of the history of it and all the sighting reports, and we try to find experts in the field that we can talk to and kind of get a better lay of the land. And then we try to find, obviously an area that could potentially hide a large creature and a population of them, and that's kind of where we focus our investigation on.
Is it mostly within the states that you search for these creatures?
Filming wise, yes. I research globally though.
And then a follow-up question to that is, how often do you end up looking in state land and state forests?
More than you'd think. Obviously, we don't need permission necessarily for public lands, which is nice. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of these areas where some of these creatures are said to exist are, large areas of state land. So
yeah, because it's not interrupted by people as much. Mm-hmm. So Irene, if you want to introduce yourself.
Hi, Nash. Sorry I'm late.
Hi, no problem.
I was getting connected here. I'm actually at the Palmer House. I came for a weekend. I did some investigating. And as you can see, I'm in the cafe. It's the Palmer House behind me. So I had a little bit of trouble jumping on.
Nice. So you're not far from me.
No?
Nope.
Oh, that's so I'm in Sauk Center. So
yep. Yeah, I'm about 3 hours south of there.
Oh, yeah, not far at all. Should make a trip down there. Go find some cryptids out in the forest.
There's not many around here, unfortunately.
I'm actually at the Livingston County Poorhouse right now.
Oh, good
trying
spot.
To help with an investigation.
That's a great location. Is there something? Oh. The lampshade's moving.
That's fun.
So it's the Palmer House. So, I wanted to ask. So I found your show pretty cool. I went back and I looked at an older episode of that you had on YouTube, and you went to it was called the Devil's Punch Bowl.
Yep.
And I thought that was pretty interesting. And
yeah, that's a cool place.
Yeah, could you share a little bit about it with everybody? And it's not far from here, right? It's not too, it's within driving distance from where I am right now.
Yeah, it's just over this. It's like 45 minutes over the border into Wisconsin from Minnesota. Yeah. If that. But yeah, so Devil's Punch Bowl, it's a geological feature in Menominee, Wisconsin, that it's just basically like a big granite bowl where, the water is just kind of, ripped the land apart. And I think there was, I don't know the geological history of it, but I think, it was all Ice Age done and such. But yeah, it's huge. The photos didn't do it justice. We didn't realize it was as big as it was until we got there. But yeah, tons and tons of weird kind of reports around it. Menominee is a college town, so a lot of it is catch my drift. But
the name alone, I can't imagine having to say that on a regular basis. Menominee.
Yeah. And so there's a lot of reports of light anomalies, and there's one of the stories is that if you collect water from the bowl, it never changes its temperature or clarity. There's reports of gnome-like creatures that live down there, and if you don't leave an offering of Skittles, they will basically trick. They will mess with you, and people go down there, and they, if they don't leave an offering, they can't get their cars to start, and it's a lot of weird stuff. So yeah, it was kind of one that we had always kind of had on our radar, and eventually did, and it was a lot of fun. Yeah, that one was cool. I mean, it's definitely on the way more heavily on the folkloric side, because we really didn't have anything happen to us that we couldn't explain. But it was, it was.
So they didn't take the Skittles?
No, we had a trail cam set up on it. The whole 4 or 5 hours we were there, and nothing ever went and touched it. And
now, did you take a sample of water home with you, or did you try?
I did. I still have it. It's in an evidence bag somewhere in all of my storage of things, but yeah, it changed temperature and clarity.
But it's a great story. I can't imagine. It's just a perfect example of a lot of stories, a lot of different experiences coming together and making this one big story, this one big, I don't want to say myth, because some of it has some truth. Some people had their experiences, but this what we would consider maybe like myth or legend.
Well, it was weird too, because we couldn't really pinpoint where it all started, like where the stories originated. It's like they just were kind of like local lore that just kind of took a life of its own and spiraled into this wild thing.
That's pretty. You know what it reminds me of? Do you remember what was the story where they said little kids would push a car over?
Oh yeah, there's like the railroad. Yeah. There's always there's stories like that all over the place.
Yeah, and then they found that
it's typical. Yeah, it's like optical illusions where it looks like the road is level and it's not. Yeah, there's I think there's one like that here in Minnesota that's the same thing, and I think there's one or two in Wisconsin. Yeah, everywhere has like that seems to have a story like that.
It's pretty interesting. It's pretty where our minds will go. It makes me wonder too. This weekend there was talk, about the Mothman and all the legends. Did things like that, like the stories of the these legends or myths, is that what inspired you to kind of go into doing? I'm sure JD already asked you a little bit about that.
But I'll reiterate. Yeah, I was so. So I was in like second or third grade. This was like 2002, 2003. And I came across a book about Bigfoot in my elementary school library, and I was like, "Oh, this is interesting." And I was really into like wildlife TV at the time, so like finding a book talking about unofficial undiscovered hominid in North America, I was like, "Well, this is interesting," and I just kind of took that, and then I got into Loch Ness and UFOs from there, and then as paranormal TV kind of caught on, it kind of just spiraled into everything.
So that's pretty cool. What made you decide then you're going to do your own show, that you want to go out there and actually make something?
Again, this I'll reiterate. It was kind of like, there was a show called Destination Truth that ran for 5 seasons. I think it was from like 2007 to 2012, and probably one of my favorite cryptid shows still is. I still go back and watch it all over again with Josh Gates, and it was like that had ended, and then there was a few other shows that were kind of starting to come out that were trying to do cryptids, but they just weren't doing them any justice, and it was just super cheesy and super overproduced. And I was interested in filmmaking, interested in cryptids, and there was this kind of, I was joking with a friend, and I was like, there's these cryptid cases all over the world that we should kind of do something on. And we found this one in Kiryat Yam, Israel. There was a mermaid that's reported, and the mayor of the city was offering a $1 million reward for proof that this mermaid exists off the shores of this town. So like, let's go there, let's go look for this mermaid, let's shoot a documentary about it, and if we find it awesome, we get $1 million. If not, then we got a cool story to kind of tell. And then from there, it just kind of snowballed into, well, what if we do this for other things? Or what if we just make it a show? Let's just make our own TV show. And none of us knew how to make a TV show at the time. But we were like, yeah, we can figure this out. If some of these people that are on TV now can do it, we can do it too. So we just kind of got what gear we had together and found something to shoot about. And I always joke that my cryptid show, the very first episode, was a ghost hunting investigation, and we found a local spot that we knew we could get access to because it was on public, it was within a public area, and we didn't have to get any permits, so we wouldn't get in trouble for trespassing and all this. And we went and shot there, and we had no intent of releasing it, but we had stuff happen, so we're like, all right, let's cut this together and put it out. And that was the first episode of Chasing Legends.
Oh wait, was that the Hell's Tunnel?
Yep.
Okay. That's pretty cool.
It makes sense that Josh Gates is one of your influences, because it definitely reminds me of Destination Truth.
Yep. Yeah, I got a signed picture of him right here.
That's awesome. The way your layout too, you kind of follow a similar format and how you want to feel. You go out into the woods, you go looking, you immerse yourself in the location, so you can actually get more of a realistic experience of what it's like in that space. Oh,
I'm frozen on my end. I don't know if I'm frozen.
okay. We can hear you. We
okay.
can't.
Well, we'll just deal with it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean DT was my biggest inspiration for this, and so it was, imitation's the best form of flattery. Obviously, we didn't want to completely rip off the show entirely, but there was a lot of elements that we enjoyed that we really didn't see like replicated elsewhere. Like nobody else was doing like all of the shows you see even today. It's just you have your hosts and the production crew are just nameless, faceless people. And that was one thing that we enjoyed about DT was that the production crew was the team. They were the investigation team as well. And I've actually gotten to know a handful of the people that worked on DT, and that's kind of and they all love that we are doing kind of our own spin on it, and we've kind of been blessed with having that blessing of from the people that did it. And so that was something that we wanted to do. It's like I didn't want to just be on camera by myself, talking to the camera and talking to the audience, and then out there looking for this stuff. And so it's like you need people to talk to when you're doing these investigations. You need people you can lean on. So that's where we're like, well, let's just do the same format. Let's just the production crew is the investigation crew, and when we bring people on to do the show, we have to ask them like, hey, are you comfortable being on camera, because you're going to be doing both. And luckily we've built a pretty good team now of very talented filmmakers that are also very comfortable on camera, so it really kind of lends to everything. And it's nice kind of having those perspectives of people that aren't interested in the subject, because then you can kind of get outside. You can kind of ask them like, hey, you're skeptical on this whole thing, how do you think about this? And you can kind of get a lot more perspectives that way.
Have you ever had so in these, so you obviously see on DT or some of the his newer Expedition X, things happen, random things happen, or unexpected things happen. What's your most memorable unexpected thing so far that's happened when you've kind of thrown yourself into this atmosphere?
Almost being attacked by alligators in Louisiana.
Oh.
That was probably the hairiest of situations we've been in. We've had a handful of close calls. Luckily, we've all made it out, or we've had a handful of kind of dumb situations we've ended up in. And kayaking on Lake Champlain at night was pretty high up on the dumb list. But hey, he got us out there. You go out, you go out into the the wilderness like we do, and put yourself in these locations where these things are supposed to live. You gotta be on your toes, because you're miles from anything, and things can go wrong really quick.
Don't you ever worry? So if you're going out and you're looking for this mythical creature, or one of the Mogollon monster. That was it. So you went out and looking for this particular monster, and you might not be safe, or you might not. What happens if you run into it? Do you ever think about that? Like, oh well, what if I?
We always joke about it. I don't think we ever really I forget who it was. One of my crew guys brought up that once. He's like, what do we do if we actually find this thing? And I'm like, we just, hope we can all gang up on it. And, there's 6 of us, we can take this thing. And, it's, I think, you kind of hope that it doesn't get physical with you, and that you can just get close enough to get good shots of it. And And then as it moves on, you can get, hopefully get some DNA and some physical evidence, because that's ultimately where we're at in the field. That's the only thing that's going to prove any of these things exist, unfortunately.
And at least one of you survives to bring back all of the evidence.
Exactly, yeah. Have to, divvy up the samples 6 ways, so at least somebody has it.
That's pretty awesome. It takes a lot of guts. I really, I don't want to go out into the woods and risk getting bitten by alligators or spiders or anything crazy. So it takes a lot of guts. So I'm impressed by, what you're going out there and doing, and, and doing it. You don't just talk about it. You don't just, you're not narrating it. You are actually right in the middle of all of it. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, well, we're gonna the new stuff that we're gonna start working on here. I will be narrating it as well, but it's more of just to kind of like string things along and include more information. But it's all going to be the same. So the new stuff is going to look even more like Destination Truth than our old stuff.
That's okay.
But for the better. For the better.
Yeah, but like think about it. Like Josh Gates, they could only go to so many places. They're only one team, and it's a big world. So there can be more than one Destination Truth. There could be more shows out there that are like it. I don't know what just happened there. Did you see that?
Yes.
The video went black and white. That was insane.
So, Nash, is that a confirmation for season 2?
It's not a confirmation. We're doing things a little differently. We're doing episodic stuff is tough. We all have lives and families, and so and as much as I want to be on the road 6 months out of the year, it's not feasible right now. So we're just gonna start doing basically like longer form, like special episodes, like once or twice a year,
like a documentary style, like mini.
Yeah, so it'll be kind of like our typical episode format. It'll just be a little extended and a little bit more. There'll be one-off like pieces versus like a season. So it won't be there won't be like a kickoff narration, basically like on this episode kind of a thing. It's just going to be so it'll be like so it'll be like an episode. It'll be documentaries but it'll be the same format where everyone's used to. It'll just be strung out and with more field work is kind of where the idea of it came to, is to showcase the actual looking and not so much of the talking.
Very cool. Can you give us a hint?
Trips get longer?
That's it.
I wish. Yeah, because the one we're planning right now, I was like, ideally this should be like a 10-day thing, but we don't have the time to make it a 10-day thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, it'll be a little longer than we typically made them in the past, which will be nice.
Can you give us a little hint of locations, maybe? Or, I mean, you don't have to give us the story, but where you're going.
I'll just say it's one people have already seen.
Wait. People have seen, like, with their own eyes, or like a show similar to something?
It's something we've already done.
Okay.
So
Oh.
we're doing a continuation of something we've already done with more in depth.
Interesting.
That's all I will say.
Very cool.
What was your favorite story from this season? The series so far?
They've all been. I'd say Champ was like a dream come true because I've researched that one forever. So to finally get out there and kind of like throw my own hat into the ring, and that was really cool. COVID really restricted us, which is why we were in kayaks, but it was fun. Rougarou and Mogollon Monster were up there in terms of just the locale of where we got to go. Mogollon for sure, just because of how just incredibly vast that whole region is. But Rougarou was cool just to kind of explore the swamps of Louisiana and dodge gators. Yeah,
but the danger factor had to be quite up on that one.
Oh yeah, there was everyone was pretty on edge on that one. I was pretty convinced by the end of that one that I was not going to have a team afterwards, but
Well, glad you're all still alive.
Yeah, so am I.
And I'm sure it made for an interesting episode.
Did for sure. Definitely made me rethink how we what we bring with us now out into the field.
Oh, that's true. What do you think? Well, I can't recall. So what was it for anybody that hasn't seen the episode yet? What was it you think caused that to happen? Maybe as a warning for others if they want to go out in the field on their own or do something similar to what you're doing.
The alligator situation?
Yeah.
We saw them. We saw them, and we think that because there was two of them that were probably 15 feet from us, and we think that they were either it was just a territorial thing or they had a nest somewhere nearby. Because when we saw them, we all just kind of stopped and looked at them and watched them for a minute, and that's when they just kind of started thrashing. And I mean, they weren't like close enough to us that they could have done harm, but they could have. I mean, gators are quick. So that was kind of what we think happened, was that we just we hung around too long, and it was just kind of like a hey, get out of here. But yeah, I mean, the whole time we were out there, we were seeing them all over the place, and we only had it was like a 3-foot wide, boardwalk with no railings, and it had rained that day, so it was all slick and wet, and that's what we had to walk on. And there was quite a majority of it was just water on both sides, no solid anything. So yeah, we really didn't have anywhere to go, and so pick your locations a little better. And in a ideal world, we would have probably been in more of the real swamp and in a better part of Louisiana, but that's just kind of where we had to go due to our time constraint. But yeah, just make sure you're not alone, and make sure you're prepared.
Are all of you trained in first aid?
No. A couple of us are, but no, not everybody.
Okay, one of you is. That helps. As long as he doesn't get eaten by the alligator, then you're in good shape.
For an interviewee, is there a time frame that you guys set for any?
For how long we let them talk?
For like when they witnessed it, is how old
no.
Count?
Because I mean, with some of these, some of these people, if their sighting is like crazy enough, and it was in the 80s, we're gonna talk to them. Because if they saw it, detailed enough, with the case of Champ, that was like a majority of them, other than like the one lady we talked to that saw it 3 days before we were out there. The Christine Hebert, who we interviewed, her sighting was back, the 70s, 80s, but she saw it like super detailed, and she saw 2 of them. So, we had to talk to her just because her story is so famous. But yeah, it all kind of depends on, I mean, obviously with some, if it's like a Bigfoot thing, probably not, just because, if you've heard one Bigfoot story, you've heard them all. But obviously if it's descriptive enough and it's credible enough, we'll talk. But typically we try to find ones that are more recent to kind of support us being there looking for it now. But there's definitely ones that
encounters online, or do you guys go out and find new ones?
Yeah, it's all kind of like it's basically all online. We just kind of, I have there's a guy named Carrick that he runs Crash Course Cryptozoology on YouTube, and he does a bunch of he's really, really good researcher, knows his stuff very, very I consider myself a decent researcher, and he's a great researcher. And he helps us on the research side of things. So him and I usually will just kind of track these people down and kind of reach out and say, hey, we're doing this. Are you interested in talking? Cool. All right, we'll be here this time. Does that work? And then it just kind of goes from there.
So is it difficult to find people, though, that are willing to share their stories? I mean, someone has known or in the newspaper or something like that maybe is one thing, but
lately it's gotten a lot more interesting or a lot more easy. I think with like the internet and stuff like that, and more people sharing their stories, there's a lot more people that are now willing to tell their stories because they're not going to be they're less likely to be considered nuts. Whereas I think, years ago, that was kind of the stigma. It was pretty taboo to kind of tell your story. That's kind of why you start hearing some of these ones that were, early 2000s and farther back, is because these people just didn't want to tell their story. Because, whether they were well respected in the community and didn't want to lose that status, or they just didn't want to be considered a loon. But yeah, lately it's gotten a lot easier to kind of find people that, either have had an encounter or know somebody that has an encounter that they can kind of connect us. And a lot of the times too, when we kind of find our like quote unquote expert on whatever we're looking for, they usually know, a handful of people that they've personally interviewed for their research that they can kind of send us to. So, which we've lucked out quite a bit in the past with.
Yeah, that's really good to have.
Yeah, because one thing we've noticed in the paranormal world is somebody will want to interview, and and then back out because work. They don't want to be judged at work or possibly lose their job. And then other people are outright willing; they have no problem with it. It's, I guess, just situational.
Yeah. It's the same thing with this. I'd say the reluctancy is a little bit more there because you're dealing with a physical sighting of something. I guess either way you're gonna have that stigma potentially connected to it, but for some reason on the cryptid side of it, there definitely seems to be that fear of, like, I think I've actually had somebody tell me once that they feel that if they had told people they saw a ghost, they would be more like believed than them seeing, X, Y, or whatever that they saw.
So what are your thoughts on how more and more nowadays people are looking at Bigfoot as maybe not just a creature that exists here on Earth, but could be interdimensional? What are your thoughts on that? The theory that he is crossing through dimensions,
it's become the explanation for the lack of evidence. That's my opinion on it. It's we can't find it, so it must be this.
It's possible,
I don't buy into it. I'm on the biologist side. I'm a full-fledged aper. I don't buy into the wood stuff. It's the woo stuff. To me, these are, if they are real animals, they are either are misidentified or they are undiscovered. Or extinct.
Yeah,
animals that are still not, still around.
They recently they find things that were believed to be extinct in the oceans and in jungles that they thought, okay, in textbooks they're extinct, but oh no, wait, here's one here. It actually has still survived. And it happens all the time. So it's possible. It's possible that this is something that did exist, and we just, it's still not extinct yet, but it's deep into places that, are hard to find.
Yep, it's called the Lazarus taxon. That's the
phenomenon.
I did a whole presentation on it at a event last year.
Yes. Well, tell our viewers a little more about it. Do you want to share a little more on it?
Sure. Yeah. So a Lazarus taxon. Obviously, Lazarus comes from the biblical text because he was brought back from the dead, and taxon is just more of like the biology kind of animal.
Yeah.
So it's it's an animal that came back from the dead essentially. Even though it didn't, we assumed it was dead because it shows up in the fossil record, and then we find it sometime later completely unchanged and it kind of throws everything into a loop, because it's like, oh, we've thought this thing was dead, and depending on the so like the coelacanth is probably the classic example. It's a prehistoric fish that we thought died out 65 million years ago, and then back in the, when was it, 30s, 40s, 50s maybe, one was caught off the coast of South Africa, and now we've found 4 or 5 different species of them alive. And I think just recently one was filmed for the first time. So yeah, and but yeah, there's stuff. There's a list of them that have been found that thought were totally extinct, and then someone comes finds one, and there's cases where some of the locals have known they were there the whole time, but just assumed that they were regular old wildlife, didn't realize that they were so you always find the people say, oh yeah, they taste delicious, and it's like, oh, you've just been eating this thing that you thought was dead. But yeah, there's the reason I kind of did a presentation on it, and I've been kind of focusing on it, is because it's something that I've been kind of leaning more into research-wise. I think that's an explanation for not all, but some cryptid cases around the world, that you kind of look at, kind of do some cross comparisons, and realize that there's a lot of parallel features between what's described in the cryptid side of it and what's described on the what this animal looked like through the fossil record. And it's like, well, what if they're the same thing? Whether it's stories being passed down from cultures from their ancestors that were alive when these things were alive, or they're generally seeing this thing still alive. Probably my favorite of the list is the Megatherium, which is a giant ground sloth that lived down in South America. We had them up here too, a different genome of them, different subspecies of them. But the description of the the description of the Megatherium is close to a cryptid known as the Mapinguari that is reported throughout the Amazon region. And it's like, oh, maybe that's what people are seeing. And actually recently just came across a sighting of a guy that saw one in 2016 in Guyana, and it was like plain as day, broad daylight. He's like, it was a bear, but it was bigger than a bear, and it was in a burrow. And I'm like, that's textbook ground sloth. And then you have other ones too. They're obviously Megatherium died out 11,000 years ago, but there's reports all through the Amazon of people seeing very large something that just moves through, elephant-sized, So it's not, in a region like that, it's not totally crazy to think. You have somewhere like the Amazon that they're finding new species every day.
Yeah.
So who's to say that there isn't something that's just evading? There's native populations of Amazonian people that will just avoid certain parts of the forest because they're afraid of things that are out there, whether it's uncontacted tribes or the wildlife. And these are people that deal with the wildlife every day. So if there's something out there wild that they don't want to come across, that's should make you kind of perk up and consider it. And there's other ones too. Obviously, there's the one that I'm holding out hope on is the thylacine, still being alive or being found, and that can be considered a Lazarus taxon. And then, there's all over the world. There's creatures that are long gone, but something is being described that's pretty similar.
What do you think about the possibility that? No, go ahead, JD.
What is the thylacine or?
Thylacine, Tasmanian tiger.
Oh, yeah.
Thylacine's the scientific name. It's its real name. It's its government name.
Scientific.
What do you think about the possibility that They could be cave dwellers, deep into the cave ground, things like that. In terms of going back to like Bigfoot or Sasquatch, or where they could be, hiding. Because one of the best stories that I've heard is when somebody asks, where are all the bones of, Bigfoot and all these creatures that you're, talking about? And then they said, so, where are all the bones of the deer that have been, that have died over all of these years? Where are they're not piled up all over the forest. Yeah.
Yeah, obviously, you're looking at, much larger bones if these things are,
of course.
What
there are a
lot
of
but I mean, I often say, and I'm not a Bigfoot researcher. I'm not, I research Bigfoot, but that's not the only thing I look into. But, one of my arguments is it's like, well, we know moose exist. How many people go into the woods and see a moose? And that's a very large, animal. So
or bear.
Who's to say who's to say that, these things aren't out there? But yeah, when I think about the bones, I think about the Homo naledi that was just recently discovered, which was it was one of our ancestral hominids that they found in Africa, and they found this cave that was full of their corpses that appeared to be ceremoniously buried. And this was, this was far enough back where before civilization was even a thing. They didn't even have the wheel, they didn't have fire, they didn't have any of that yet, but they were burying their dead in a very hard to reach cave. So who's to say that, if Bigfoot, Sasquatch are real in the numbers that they would need to be, that they're not doing that, in these cave systems. And I think I actually saw it made its rounds a while back, but there was a list, or it was basically a map of the U.S. and it was like every reported Sasquatch sighting overlaid with every known cave system in the U.S. and it was like almost exactly the same. So yeah, I mean, it's who's to say, especially when you get down to like the Ozarks and over into like Kentucky and stuff like that. I mean, most of that ground's hollow, so it's not impossible.
Yep. I've got to the point where never say never. Go ahead, JD.
I was thinking about it, like, what about all the different subspecies of Bigfoot? Just if it's not confirmed to be real, but then there's all the subspecies.
Mm-hmm. That's the other one for me. Is the people always ask me all the time, is like, do you believe in Bigfoot? And I'm like, well, it depends. Which Bigfoot are you talking about? So if we're talking about North American Bigfoot, I think it's highly unlikely. If you're talking about Bigfoot elsewhere, then yeah, probably. The Yeti, wouldn't be surprised. Urine in China, I wouldn't be surprised. The Yowie, I wouldn't be surprised. Orang Pendek, I wouldn't be surprised. But these all live in areas that are very remote and they can easily support a large enough population for these things to thrive, and they're far enough away where they're not going to get discovered. Yeah, I think we actually did that. So I do the Van Meter Visitor Festival every year in Van Meter, Iowa, and this last year we did at our booth, when people came by, we could ask them what your favorite cryptid was, just to kind of like gauge and see what people liked. And Bigfoot was the top because I think that was just like the easiest answer for everybody.
Not the
but if anyone, but if we got a couple of those, but anytime that someone just said straight up Bigfoot, we'd always follow up with, well, which one? And most of the time we got a confused look and a, what do you mean? And then I was like a sleeper agent that just heard his activation phrase and I just went off. And I was like, well, you got this one and this one, this one, this one. And it's like their eyes like glazed over and they're like, just classic Bigfoot. And then again, I'd be like, okay, well, which one? What's considered classic Bigfoot to you? Because there's Bigfoot stories elsewhere in the world that predate any of the Bigfoot stories here in the U.S. So what do you consider classic Bigfoot? So yeah, it was kind of an experiment for us to see who truly understood the assignment and who actually like looked into these things. So anytime we got the really obscure ones, I was like, okay, you actually like look into this stuff. You know enough of what you're talking about. But yeah, the Bigfoot ones were funny because it was like 9 times out of 10 it was like They just didn't understand that this is a global phenomenon, or they didn't even like consider or care that there was these other ones. And I like that you called them a subspecies, because yes, that's what they would be.
Back home, I have the Klipnaki hairy women that aren't heard about at all. They're somewhat of a tie into Bigfoot, but then you don't know the legend outside of the local area.
Mm-hmm.
So it's
I mean, obviously within the U.S., we all have either, there's regional Bigfoot names all over the place. Obviously, Mogollon Monster is, one that we've personally done. But then you obviously got Skunk Ape in Florida. Ohio's got one they called the Grass Man, and all but which in Pennsylvania, obviously just Sasquatch, Bigfoot in kind of Pacific Northwest. And there's we have our own regional ones here. I mean, they seem to all just kind of get roped into Bigfoot in the U.S., and then once you kind of get outside of the states, it's like, oh, pretty much every country has their own name for this thing. And sometimes, some countries have multiple names for it.
It's kind of like, how can we have, similar experiences? I mean, there may not be exactly alike, or they might not describe them exactly in the same way, but similar enough all over the world. But still, we kind of wonder if it, if we think of it as not existing, or that it's a paranormal phenomenon, or that's the phone. Sorry about that. So a paranormal phenomenon or something like that, it baffles me. The biggest part of, identifying species, or, figuring out, like investigating something biologically would be to ask people from the area, get their descriptions, look for this this creature or this animal or this whatever they've described, and see if you can find it and prove it. Why does this particular type, what we call cryptid, maybe they look weirder or they're described a little crazier, but why can't we look at it in a more serious way and not look at it, and not be judged by trying to investigate that same exact thing?
Yeah, exactly. And it drives me nuts when regional names for Bigfoot from like other parts of the world, like the Yeti, for one, gets like, I always, like, anytime I hear somebody telling a story of like, oh, I saw a Yeti in Kentucky. Like, no, you didn't. You saw a Bigfoot in Kentucky. You did not see a Yeti in Kentucky. Yetis are in the Himalayan region. It did not travel to Kentucky to reveal itself to you. I see the Yeti gets roped into so many, and it drives me nuts. I immediately consider that a discredit, or I immediately discredit it when I see that. But yeah, you're right. It's kind of weird because it's like, I don't know for sure if these things exist. I consider myself an open-minded skeptic. Obviously, I want these things to exist, but when it comes to certain ones, that's like, it's pretty hard. But the Bigfoot for me is an interesting one because it is this kind of global shared experience that goes back thousands of years before the internet, before the migration to the new world, and before there was any sort of global communication. You have this story of large hairy beasts that were either considered spiritual or a nuisance depending on where you're at, and these stories have just kind of persisted. Obviously, you have to look at some of these stories and think, is it just a memory? Are people really actually still seeing this, or are they just remembering the stories of it and then misidentifying something and just throwing its name on it because they couldn't figure out what the heck it was, so it must be this, which you run into a lot in cryptozoology. But
okay, so you interviewed all those people to find out what their favorite cryptid was. What is your favorite?
I'm privy to thylacine. I think it's just, thylacine.
Elusive to you right now, or is there a particular?
I think it's just interesting to me because its range was, thylacine was a real animal that was hunted to extinction by man only less than 100 years ago. But they still get reported today. And it's just, for me, it's kind of like that, you kind of hope that, these things are still around, especially since they were just so like viciously, slain to the point of non-existence.
Yeah.
But the range was incredibly vast. I mean, this was an animal that populated the entire island of Tasmania, the entire eastern side of Australia, and then New Guinea and Papua New Guinea as well. So this was, a lot of area. And then obviously you get into parts of Tasmania, very hard, very unexplored, very remote, very possible that, these could be a population surviving. And you get into Papua New Guinea, and that's a whole different ballgame because you have majority of the island is very unexplored because it's very hard to get to. You have cannibal tribes that you have to watch out for. And it's just logistically, it's a nightmare. So there's very well, that's kind of where my money would be, is Papua New Guinea. But again, you would need the resources you would need to even conduct a thorough enough investigation to determine one way or another. And even then you probably wouldn't even barely scratch the surface, is astronomical. So
I don't know.
One of those things.
Cannibals, alligators. I don't know.
Yeah.
Or both.
Yeah.
You never know.
Saltwater crocodiles and cannibals. Yeah, I mean, it seems, and I get asked that question all the time, and my answer is my short list is all in dangerous places. That's kind of like how it all kind of cracks down to me, because I'm like, oh, that's where they would be. They're going to be where people aren't.
Yeah.
So can you tell us when you premiere your new episodes, where can people find your new episodes?
So the new specials we'll be putting out, I think the plan is 1 this year, and then moving forward potentially 2. But it's probably going to be like a 1 a year thing. We might do some other smaller form things. I don't know yet, but it's going to be exclusive to Paraflix. They're the ones that are greenlighting all this and giving us the resources and the platform to do it. And they've been great to us with the re-release of season 1. So we're like, yeah, if you want to do it, we'll do it. So new stuff will be exclusive to Paraflix. Everything else up to this point will be available on YouTube. Our season 1 is currently streaming on Paraflix, and will do so until the end of spring, I believe is the plan, and then they will be available back on YouTube. But yes, the new stuff, all the new stuff will be exclusive to Paraflix.
And your YouTube, it's at Chasing Legends Official.
Yes, that's our social handle for everything. So Instagram, Facebook, YouTube is all Chasing Legends Official.
If somebody wanted to reach out to you, say they wanted to tell you about a story of, something mysterious or cryptid that they've experienced, how can they contact you to share what their experience was, and maybe ask you to come out to the location and maybe investigate there?
You can message us through our website, chasinglegendscrew.com. There's a message area on there. I do my best to try and see them. I don't always get them right away, so I apologize to the people that email me and I don't see it for 3 months. Otherwise, if you follow me on Instagram, feel free to message me there. I will see it eventually. Yeah, I mean, there's a few different ways. If any of the avenues, any of the socials, my personal, the Chasing Legends Instagram, our website, any of those, email me.
Once they reach out and say you contact them back and you think, okay, this might be something legitimate, something we do want to investigate, what's the process after that for anybody that might want to take this seriously?
It's long. Yeah, obviously, if we deem it production worthy, then it's kind of just us putting our heads together and doing a logistical half of it and seeing if there's more people to talk to and trying to pinpoint kind of where, unless obviously the person tells us where. Typically, everything we do is done through our own research. we've had people reach out to us in the past, but either it just wasn't possible to go and investigate what they claimed, either due to time, money, or just the sheer non-believability of their story. But yes, I do get reached out. I do have people that tell me things. There's quite a few cryptids on my list that I've learned of through people that have reached out to me, and have kind of nudged me in the direction of it. So yeah, I'm totally open to people reaching out and sharing their stories, sharing, potentially new cryptid cases with me. And yeah, if I feel it's worth our time and energy, we'll make it something.
Very cool. And you're open to not just the cryptids. What if somebody has some kind of mythical story or experiences? You're open to that as well?
Depends. Yeah, I mean, I'll listen to anything, but you tell me you got dragons in your backyard, I'm not going to come.
Aw, that poor dragon.
Don't send me blurry photos of the red circle and tell me to look, because I'm not. Delete that immediately.
I'm thinking like a hole that keeps burning, or something like, why is this burning still continuously? You want to investigate this, or some random shit like that.
Call your city gas.
Call your city gas line.
Something's wrong.
Anything else you want to bring up, Nash?
Not that I can think of.
Okay. So, thanks everyone for joining us for this episode of the podcast. We hope you were able to learn something new during this video. We will be hosting another podcast interview next Sunday at 8 p.m., so keep an eye out for our upcoming guest. Also, make sure to follow us on social media accounts, as we will be posting updates on our content production projects. Have a good night, everyone, and thanks for joining us, Nash.
Yeah, thanks for having me.